Hello everyone. Hope you are enjoying WordCamp Kathmandu 2018 and uh, let's get it started. We are living in a dangerous online world that although seems to be working smoothly and efficiently, but things are entirely different in the background. Hackers are constantly trying to gain access to our websites by phishing and brute force attack and malwares, and by exploiting the vulnerabilities in our themes and plugins. So let's get smart on how we can develop secured WordPress themes and plugins. I'm Tikaram Bhandari. I work as a happiness engineer and as well as a theme developer at Cash Themes. Cash Themes has been developing themes and plugins over the last 5 years, and it has been our first priority to make sure that the themes and the plugins are secure and solid. So my role as a happiness engineer and theme developer is to create relationship based on trust, which results in happy, passionate, and loyal customers. So how many of you have written themes and plugins? Can you please raise your hand? Okay, that's great. So we here think that the themes and the plugins are secure enough. Do you think that the themes and the plugins that you write are secure? Okay, in general, not a good situation because life, we have come through this phrase, life is a journey, not a destination. Similarly, security is also a journey. It is not a destination. It is not like some predefined step that you follow, that's done. And so it's a continuously evolving process. So everything is dynamic. You have to keep on updating every day. So it's not like completing some predefined step. It's not like completing some predefined step. So what might be the reasons behind our insecure WordPress themes and plugins? Basically, the problems are due to the lack of awareness and the lack of concern. The first one, lack of awareness, is like we are intelligent enough to solve the issues if we are aware of that, but until and unless we are aware about the problem, we will not be able to resolve the issues. So the next one is the lack of concern. For example, when an engineer builds a structure, he needs to make sure that it's not going to collapse on people. Similarly, while developing themes and plugins, we have to create a right mindset about securing our WordPress themes and plugins. Let's look at the first kind of attack, that is SQL injection. So this is one of the most serious problems because it gives access to the database, and if an attacker is able to execute malicious SQL statements, then that's game over. So these are remotely exploitable, and you will not know that the damage that happens is considerable. So here is a normal or a manual update query that we are updating post table, setting title when certain condition is made. The danger points here are the $title and my ID. So if someone is able to insert some malicious SQL statement over here, then SQL injection can occur. So how can we prevent from this? So what should we do at this condition? We should never be using normal queries or manual queries in WordPress. We should always make use of the APIs. There are a wide list of APIs available in the WordPress, so we have to make use of that. Always make sure that the use of APIs are safe, and that requires minimal effort from our side. So you make sure that you use APIs. For the previous example, we can make use of WP update post, but let's assume that WP update post is not available. Let's pretend it is not available. So at that condition, what we can do? WordPress database class has a handy method called update that we can make use of. So we can make use of update, and we can make sure that it does all the escaping for us. The SQL query that we pass through it is SQL escaped, and this does all the escaping for you. So update queries are really simple, like they are in the form like update table, set foo is equal to bar when x is equal to y. We can pass in this that way. We can even pass multiple queries combined by AND. So These are really simple things that you need to know as a theme and a plugin developer. Okay, the next is insert. We can make use of insert whenever we insert. We need to insert data into the table. We can use that. This also does all the skipping for us. So again, it requires minimal effort from our side. We can make use of prepare. These are sprintf and base printf. Powered queries, and this also takes the advantage that this does all the skipping for us. So whatever we are inserting into the database is safe and secure. With this, we come to our first rule. We have to always sanitize our list. Sanitization is the process of cleaning or filtering your input data. Whenever we receive the data from a web service, a user, or an API, we should not trust that data. We should always filter the data before inserting the data into the database. So make sure that you use the sanitized series of helper functions that are already available in WordPress, and you should always take care of that. That requires minimal effort from your side. So in many cases, it is not even necessary to make your custom callbacks or sanitization functions, so you can make use of the available functions. The second attack is cross-site scripting. So this is the most common vulnerability. The idea here is the malicious party tricks you into running some malicious script, Java scripts into your browser, which allows them to control your browser and leverage them to the further attacks. So how can we save ourselves from cross-site scripting? So you can see an example where we are echoing the title in H1 tag. So how can we stop that script from running? So how can we prevent ourselves from cross-site scripting? So here, if the user can run that script, then the script will do whatever the attacker or the malicious party tries to trick you into do. So we should always escape our data. And escaping means process of securing output by stripping out tags, malformed HTML, and preventing the data from being seen as code. So you should always escape the data and escape it always late. That means basically you escape our data when we want to output the data to the end user, and we should always take care when escaping data, and we should always escape as close to the vulnerability point. So which point is vulnerable, or whenever you are outputting the final output to the end user, you should always escape the data. So escaping in general doesn't mean that you escape anywhere. You cannot keep track of what is being escaped and what's being not escaped. So make sure that you escape late. Escaping is really simple as 1, 2, 3. So the first one is for the escape. The second one is for the attribute. Here, the second one is for the context. Here we have used attribute, and the third one is for the translation. So we are doing the escaping and translation in one go. So for the previous example, so how can we make the previous H1 tag safe? How can we prevent cross-site scripting in the previous example? We should make use of escape HTML. This takes care of all the escaping for you, and the output is safe and secure. So this requires minimal effort from your side, so you don't need to worry about that. The next one is we are echoing the title here, and how can we make this title attribute safe? Again, here we need to make use of the escape attribute. So this can be used on everything else that's printed in an HTML elements attribute. So you should make use of escape attribute here. This takes care of all the escaping for you, and again, this takes minimal effort from your end. The next one is we are here echoing the URL in href. So how can we make this href? How can we make this URL safe? How can we output this to the end user in a safe way? We need to make use of escape URL. We should always escape URL whenever we are displaying it to the end user. Make sure that use escape URL, and this could be even used in the src and in the href attribute as well of the URL. So what if you want to display some PHP inside JavaScript or any script? You want to echo the PHP value. For inline JavaScript, you need to make sure that you escape JS. So escape JS can be used. The next one is the escape text area. We can make use of whenever we want to encode the text that is contained inside the text area field. So the main point of this talk is that you should always make use of the APIs that are already available. You should never be doing the normal queries. You should always escape the data. You should sanitize the data before you insert it into the database. So the problem with escaping is that it kills all the database. So what if you want to keep some stylings in the widgets like bold or some links? At this condition, WordPress provides WP cases family. You can make use of cases, not exactly cases. Oh, so by its name, it means cases itself means cases strips evil scripts. So this strips out all the evil scripts that are in your content. So we can make use of WP cases post whenever we have to strip out the unwanted or unsafe HTML. And similarly, we can make use of WP cases allowed HTML to define what are the allowed HTML that you can make use of. And anything that isn't hard-coded is suspect. So we cannot keep track of what's being hard-coded and what's being not. So I have refined this rule as everything is suspect. So we should not trust anyone. This is really a terrible life advice, but really a good security advice. So you should not even trust yourself while you are writing your code. Sometimes we are so terrible that we even try to use the code in an unethical way. So you should never trust anyone. So distrust everything. So this will make sure that you are writing your code in a proper, in a secure way. The third kind of attack is the cross-site request forgery. This isn't as severe as SQL injection and cross-site scripting, but this usually doesn't result in the loss of data, but the user cannot access anything. But this is a tricky issue. Here you need to understand about authorization and intention. Authorization means what your user labels are, what you're allowed to do, what your credentials are, and intention means what you actually want to do. Sometimes when you want to do more than you are authorized to do, then a problem can arise. So how can we save ourselves from cross-site request forgery attacks in WordPress? We should make use of nonces. Nonces are numbers used once, but technically not nonces because these are used over a certain period of time, like we use this for around 24 hours or 36 hours. So this can be used to make sure that the data that you are passing from a web service or a user are valid and legit. So make sure that you use nonces. These are basically used in forms. Whenever you submit data from the forms, you have to pass nonce with the data as well. And in the admin section, you can check that. And if the nonce that has been passed from the front end matches with the nonce in the back end, then only you have to accept the user request. Otherwise, you have to reject that. So in the similar way, nonce can help us. We can even use our own nonces for Ajax requests. You can make use of WP create nonce, and similarly, you can check in your backend. Some mistake that we should avoid. We should not make use of eval. Eval is evil. So how many of you know how to make use of eval? So good. So don't learn about it. Very nice. And we should never trust server variables. Server variables, it doesn't mean that the variable is generated from the server, doesn't mean that it is safe. So we should always use escape URL. We should escape the URL, and server variables are also not safe. Don't forget to escape that. So I think I am able to cover some vulnerabilities and data escaping, sanitization. Always sanitize early and escape late, and make use of nonces to make sure that you are not affected by cross-site requests, forgery, and some common mistake that you should avoid. So if you are looking for references about my talk, then you can view in the plugin security as well as theme security in the WordPress.org. And I will be sharing my slides in SlideShare in the from Catchy Internet, so you can later on view that as well. So thank you all for your time and patience. And if you have any questions, please.